The war was almost over, but no one told the sky. Over the ruins of eastern Germany, it still burned, red and gray, as if refusing to surrender. Along a road carved by tank treads and retreating boots, a young woman walked alone. Her name was Anna Keller, once a nurse for the Luftwaffe. Now, she was nothing. Not a soldier, not a civilian, just a shadow trying to reach home through a country that no longer existed. Each step sank into mud and ash. She carried only a tin cup, a photograph, and a silence too heavy to speak. When the first American jeep appeared on the horizon, she didn't run. She simply stopped and waited for whatever came next. The jeep stopped just 20 feet away. Its engine idled like a growling beast in the cold. Two American soldiers stepped out, their uniforms dust-stained, their eyes sunken with exhaustion. They had seen too much and trusted nothing that still moved. "Hands up," one said, though the war was already dying around them. Anna obeyed. Her fingers trembled in the air, pale against the gray sky. She expected to be searched, shouted at, maybe pushed aside like so many others. But the older soldier, a sergeant with tired eyes, just stared at her for a long moment. Then he spoke quietly, almost to himself. "Jesus, she's just a kid." The younger one wasn't so gentle. He circled her, checked her satchel, then tossed it to the ground. "You speak English?" he barked. Anna shook her head. "Good," he muttered. "Keep it that way." The sergeant crouched, picking up the photo that had fallen from her bag. A picture of an old man in uniform, her father. He looked at it for a moment, then at her. "That your family?" She hesitated, then nodded. Something softened in his face. Not pity, but understanding. He straightened up and turned to the other soldier. "Get her to the camp." "She's Luftwaffe." Anna didn't know the words, but she understood the gesture. The point toward the horizon, the sound of chains behind Mercy. The sergeant lit a cigarette, his hands shaking slightly. He didn't look at her again as the jeep engine started. And as they drove, the wind carried the faint echo of a world still burning, and the first flicker of a truth she would spend the rest of her life trying to forget. Sometimes survival begins the moment you stop being free. The camp was not a place of punishment. It was something worse. A place of waiting. Rows of barbed wire, a handful of tents, and 1,000 silent questions hanging in the smoke. Anna was herded off the jeep and into a fenced yard already crowded with faces. Some were soldiers stripped of their insignia, others women like her, still wearing the ghost of their uniforms. The ground was mud and frost. The smell of oil and wet canvas filled the air. No one shouted. No one explained anything. They were simply told to stay. That first night she sat against a wooden post, knees pulled tight to her chest. The wind cut through every layer of her clothes. Someone beside her whispered in German, "They don't feed us every day." Only when they remember, Anna said nothing. She had learned already that words could not warm you. In the morning, the guards brought a bucket of gray soup. Thin, tasteless, but alive with heat. A woman next to her, older, smiled faintly as she drank. "Hot," she said, as if that alone were a miracle. Later, Anna saw one of the guards hand a biscuit through the fence to a child, a German girl, no older than 12, wearing her father's coat. The gesture lasted 1 second, maybe 2, and it reminded Anna of something she had nearly forgotten, that mercy could still exist, even here. But mercy was not the same as safety. That night, a storm rolled in. The tents sagged under rain. Somewhere in the darkness, someone cried out, not from pain, but from memory. Anna closed her eyes and whispered the only prayer she still remembered from childhood. "Let me wake up tomorrow." She did, but the girl beside her did not. 2 days later, Anna's name was called. She didn't know why, only that the guards pointed to the gate and said a word she recognized. Work. They loaded her into a jeep. The road twisted through ruined villages, hollow houses, burned farms, smoke rising from chimneys that no longer had roofs. When they stopped, it was in front of a farmhouse that looked almost alive. Curtains in the window. A radio humming inside. The guard gestured for her to step out. A man waited on the porch. American, middle-aged, uniform pressed but weary. His eyes were gray, not cruel but watchful. "You speak English?" he asked. Anna hesitated, then shook her head. "Good," he muttered softly, almost like the soldier from before. But then he smiled faintly. "You'll type. You can do that, right?" She understood enough. The farmhouse had been turned into a command post. Radios, maps, stacks of paper covered in names she didn't dare read. He pointed toward a desk by the stove. "You sit there. Type. Stay quiet." She nodded. Her fingers, still cracked from cold, found the rhythm of the keys like an old song. For the first time in months, the room was warm. The air smelled of coffee and ink instead of smoke and mud. And though she told herself she was still a prisoner, a small part of her, the part that still remembered the sound of a piano, a mother's voice, began to thaw. The officer introduced himself one evening, after a long silence. "Captain Robert Hale," he said simply. Then, after a pause, "You can stay here until they move the camps." She didn't answer, but something in the way he said it, not command, not mercy, something quieter, made her realize what he really meant. "You are safe. For now." That night, as she lay on a cot beside the stove, Anna watched the shadows dance on the ceiling. She listened to the steady sound of typing still echoing in her ears. Safety, she thought, was not the same as freedom. It was just another kind of waiting, and she had already learned how to wait. Days turned into weeks. The war outside was ending, but inside the farmhouse time stood still. Anna typed reports, cleaned the stove, fetched coffee. She moved carefully, quietly, the way animals do when they learn where the traps are. Captain Hale was never cruel. He spoke softly, asked for nothing beyond her work. Yet his silence carried weight. A quiet reminder that everything she ate, every night she slept under a roof, came from his permission. One evening, the generator failed. The radio went dead, the lamps flickered out. Hale sat in the dim orange glow of the stove, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the window. "You afraid of the dark?" he asked. Anna didn't answer. He smiled faintly. "You're not like the others. You don't talk much." She wanted to say, "I talk when it matters," but she didn't have the words in his language, so she just watched him. After a long silence, he said something strange. "Back home, I was a teacher. History, kids your age, maybe younger. I used to tell them war makes heroes. I don't say that anymore." His voice cracked just slightly, the sound of a man haunted by what he's seen, or what he's done. Then he looked at her. Not as a prisoner, but as someone who shouldn't exist in his world. "You remind me this isn't all madness," he said quietly. "You sit there, typing, and it feels like something still works." She didn't know how to answer that either. Gratitude felt wrong, so did pity. Later that night, she found an apple on her desk. Perfect. Red. It wasn't much, but in that world, it was everything. A gift, a test, and a warning, all in one. She ate half, then stopped. Because even kindness, she realized, could have a price. And in that farmhouse, surrounded by silence and mercy that didn't feel like freedom, every bite was a bargain she never agreed to make. The summer came quietly. The war was over, at least on paper. But for Anna, peace felt like a rumor. The fields outside the farmhouse turned green again. Birds returned. The world pretended it had healed. Inside, the days passed in uneasy rhythm. Typing, cleaning, silence. Captain Hale grew quieter too. His uniform stayed folded longer each morning. His hands trembled slightly when he poured coffee. The line between duty and something else, something unspoken, began to blur. One afternoon, a convoy stopped outside. 2 new officers entered, laughing, smelling of whiskey and victory. They saw Anna at the desk and exchanged a look. "Didn't know you had company, Hale," one said. The captain's expression didn't change. "She works here." "Works?" The other man chuckled. "That what we're calling it now." The laughter that followed was the kind that didn't sound human. Hale stood. "That's enough." His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. The officers smirked, muttered something under their breath, and left. When the door shut, the silence was heavier than gunfire. Anna sat frozen at the typewriter. Hale turned to her slowly. "You see?" he said softly. "They don't understand. You're safe here because I make it so." Safe. The word hit her like a slap. It wasn't kindness anymore. It was control. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to the hum of insects outside and the slow creak of the house settling. The air felt tighter, the walls closer. In the dark, she whispered to herself, "You are not property. You are not his." The next morning, she didn't wait for orders. She walked out to the field, past the broken fences, toward the dirt road that led west. Hale called after her once. Just her name, soft, almost pleading. She didn't look back, because survival, she finally understood, was not the same as being alive, and freedom sometimes began with the courage to walk away. Autumn came. The world called it peace, but for millions like Anna, it was only the end of noise. She walked for days, through fields still littered with shell casings, past homes that no longer had doors. No one stopped her. No one cared. The war had left everyone too tired for questions. When she finally reached her village, it was smaller, quieter, like a memory fading. Roofs sagged, walls were burned, and the church bell was gone. Her mother was alive, thin, gray, eyes wide with disbelief. She said her name once, as if testing whether it was still real. Anna didn't tell her about the camp or the captain or the long road home. She only said, "I worked. I survived." That was enough. The days turned simple again. Bread, firewood, silence. But every night when the world went still, Anna would hear the faint echo of a typewriter key striking paper. She would see his face, not cruel, not kind, just human, and wonder what became of him. Did he go home to his cornfields? Did he forget her name the way she tried to forget his? Or did he, too, lie awake, haunted by the mercy that looked too much like ownership? Years passed. The scars of war were buried under concrete, the stories rewritten into glory. But Anna knew the truth, that history isn't made only by generals and battles. It's written quietly, in the lives of the forgotten. The world called her lucky. But she knew luck was just another word for surviving someone else's choices. And as the autumn wind pressed against her window, she whispered to no one, "I'm free." Then, after a long pause, "At last."